Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you are new to the channel, thank you so much for checking this one out. It should be a good one. We were originally supposed to have Amber A. Lee Frost. She sadly had a family emergency. Hope all is well with Amber, but I was able to put together, I think, something pretty interesting in this last minute. Let me bring in, first and foremost, my co-host, my homie, my dog. He is the man of the Mau Mau Hour. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles.
How are you doing? How's the heat wave in Florida?
I'm listening to the check your body, check your body.
The AI house music took you back to another time.
Absolutely.
Also coming live from somewhere inside of a torture chamber inside of the Death Star. Please welcome. It's been a while since he's been on the show. Please welcome Deep State Cuba.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you there.
Cuba, it looks like you just got done doing some sort of downsizing meeting.
It turned out that we didn't have to fire anybody if we just cut 3 inches from their height.
Fuck those shins.
Literally downsizing. That was good news, everyone. No layoffs. However, you will have to report to the medical team shortly for vertical reassignment.
Vertical reassignment. Well, here's someone that was vertically reassigned at birth. She is the voice of reason on the show. Please welcome M. Toussaint.
Hello. I just want to draw attention to this comment that someone made in the chat.
Go ahead and put it up.
Put it on the screen. It's paying off, Jason. You don't have to tell me about it every day anymore.
If only DC Joe Black knew how true that statement is. Can't even say was, is currently. Got to get a pre-show pump. Oh, man. Well, welcome to today's episode where we dive into the political theater and imagery that shapes our current landscape. The recent assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump has, unsurprisingly, become a galvanizing moment for his fervent fan base. Notice I say fan base and not the Republican Party. The zealous MAGA crowd envisions Trump as he envisions himself, almost as if a 50-year career in the pop culture spotlight has inducted a group hypnosis on millions. Image has always been central to Trump's persona, evolving from a billionaire playboy to a no-nonsense reality TV boss, and now to his final form as an anti-elite warrior for the working class. From the 1980s and 90s as a gregarious hotel magnate to his stint as a pro wrestling Hall of Famer and television character, Trump's presence on The Apprentice aired on NBC for 13 years before he transitioned from Hollywood to the White House. One thing has remained constant. Trump has always stayed in character, often to his professional detriment. His latest persona as a defiant Washington outsider was immortalized this past week with an iconic image, a fist raised in the air shouting "fight" to his supporters. This moment wasn't deep faked or photoshopped. It was a genuine snapshot, emblematic of our current epoch. Images tell the story, and we fill in the blanks with our imaginations or lived experiences, whatever helps us sleep at night. In contrast, Joe Biden continues to be scrutinized publicly for signs of cognitive decline. Both men represent the oldest presidential race to date, yet Biden has garnered bipartisan media attention for his often stammering speeches, raising questions about his candidacy. This scenario is reminiscent of another television president, Ronald Reagan, who also stumbled during debates and forgot critical issues like the Iran Contra affair, yet won his second term by a landslide. Why don't we remember Reagan as the same doddering old man that we see in Biden? Does any of this matter when electoral politics often resemble team sports, where loyalty to the team trumps individual performance? Will Donald Trump be able to leverage this assassination attempt into a second presidential victory, or is this simply another marketing opportunity for a shallow huckster who sees everything, even an attempt on his life, as a money-making venture? Let's turn to the crew and hear their thoughts on these pressing questions. I will start with Pascal Robert, my co-host. You're in Florida, DeSantis country. I'm sure your news stations and scuttlebutt around town were filled with people talking about far left politics and the assassination attempt. What did you think when you saw this nonsense?
I mean, I'm going to tell you, when I first saw the imagery, I was like, "Whoa, this is kind of extreme. How did the shooter, get away with, 5 shots, placing himself at such a high vault with what would seem to be somewhat Secret Service error?"
Mhm.
So I didn't want to jump directly to conspiracy theory, but I saw so many people, particularly some folks on the left, who were like, "Oh, this was staged." I think Amber Seals literally said it was staged, and I was like, "We don't know if it was staged. There's no evidence of that." Don't forget, the shooter actually killed a fireman who was there as well.
Yeah, I saw
So,
that. Have
so
people? I try to ignore the coverage as much as possible. I was just recently in the Bay Area to see my family, and I stayed in a hotel for a change. And it was a TV, and I'm not trying to be funny. Every channel was Trump, from the local news through the cable news, even some of the sports. It was just Trump, 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 Trump. So I would just change it, and then I fell on the History Channel, which is no longer history, but just stories of rugged individualism. Nat Geo isn't much different, but is anybody talking about the innocent person that got killed in this?
not many. I mean, everyone is talking about what seems to be how this is going to be politically calculated by the Trump administration or the Trump campaign to their advantage. Many people are saying he's up in all the swing states, that this is a lock for him. I mean, people are making ultimate prognostications that Biden cannot recover. I know Biden suspended his counter campaigning against Trump for a while in order to make peace. Uh, it's I can tell you that the first images I saw the image where Trump was fist in the air, flag waving in the back, saying "fight, fight, fight." That looked convincing. It looked strong, and I think that for people who are not normally suspicious about what they consume on media, they will be strongly swayed by this notion of a fighter, hero, martyr president that can't be stopped by a bullet.
Kuba, what did you see?
I I saw much the same. The first I heard about the news from friends of mine. Then when I went to see what happened, um, the it was a whole different series of pictures. Of course, it's a major political event. You're going to have photojournalists from all kinds of outlets taking dozens of pictures continually of the candidate, and you could see the sympathy, the attitude towards Donald Trump based on which photographs they chose to run on different websites. And there are a few that make Trump look pretty heroic. And the reality is that, to go back to your intro, we have a very polarized electorate. Most states, most votes simply don't matter because you've got huge swaths of the country that are more or less unswayable. They can already be. Um, counted in one column or the other, and comes down to a few thousand voters in maybe a dozen or so swing states. And
Yeah.
those voters are not going to be brain trust of carefully considered political graybeards looking at all of the pros and cons and weighing the elements of the different political platforms. They're going to be people who are marginally attached to politics and who vote based on sentiment, based on vibes. And these are bad vibes for the Democrats and good vibes for the Republicans, especially since Trump has managed to maintain a relatively responsible and, dare I say, statesman-like tone to at least his own comments after the assassination. Granted, there's the whole "God save me" megalomania, but most people will disregard that, and the ones who will fixate on it are actually more likely to be Christian types that see it as a agree with him as to the prospect that Providence intervened for his sake. If this had been an election in which Biden had a slight edge, it would be bad enough. But ever since, even before the debate,
Mm-hmm.
Trump had a advantage in the polling, especially in key swing states. That has only increased since the debate. We don't have any new information following the assassination attempts, no new numbers, but between the assassination attempts and the ongoing Republican National Convention, which seems to be rolling out good order, good messaging. He had the president of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, delivering a very strong class war, anti-elite, anti-big corporation, pro-American worker speech, one which stopped short of endorsing Trump or the Republicans. Honestly, that's a classy move. Open up the stage to somebody who typically is associated with the other side and let them speak freely in ways that criticize some of your own constituents, elements of your own coalition, say their piece and without needing to capitulate. Similarly, there was that celebrity, the lady with the face tattoo, who represented a different kind of outreach, right? Trump has, I've been reading the programs put out by various Republican affiliated organizations, Project 2025's leadership vision, and as well as, which is insanely long and horribly boring. And then the 16-page Republican National Platform, which is basically a greatest hits of Trump's latest tweets. Punchy, easy to read, strong recommend. 100% on Goodreads. And it's very telling what the differences are between the two documents. The Heritage Foundation is obviously coming from the traditional base and the traditional coalition of free market types, the neocons, the transatlanticists, the cosmopolitan set of the neocons are gone, but there's a very, very strong military industrial element, very powerful anti-immigration, nativist sentiment, and just a huge influence, a very obvious influence of social conservatives and Christian fundamentalists. What's interesting about both the platform in the Republican Party platform and the convention so far is that certain groups that have traditionally been right at the center of the Republican coalition have been de-emphasized, and in fact, their priorities are just gone, are invisible, or sometimes just limited to a single paragraph, 1 or 2 bullet points, treated very abstractly, very superficially, while suggesting that at least for electoral reasons, and we'll see how this takes after November. But Trump is interested in winning to the point where he's not talking about any of the Christian stuff. He's not bragging about ending Roe versus Wade or any of that. He's attempting to de-emphasize it as much as possible.
I was going to ask you that, Kuba and Pascal and Toussaint. Do you guys feel like this time around, I was actually having a conversation with someone earlier today. Do you think this time around he's attempting to be quote unquote more presidential in the sense of even with his physical appearance, kind of toning down the buffoonishness?
I think he's actually taking the advice of people who told him that he should use the moment of the assassination to be a unifier to actually try to come off as a unifier.
I think that this campaign as well, remember, he went into 2016 in the same way that he went into previous long shot presidential campaigns. Make a few inflammatory statements, expect to drop out before the primaries, get a new season of The Apprentice, right? Just use it as another marketing
negotiating tool. Yeah,
precisely. That's been his strategy. There's no indication that he expected or even wanted the presidency. And this time, it matters to him that he win, because from a personal standpoint, there's all of the psychology that goes along with being a loser, refusing to be remembered as being a loser, the sense of grievance that comes from the notion that he actually did win, but the election was stolen. He may believe that, or at least partially believe that. What's certainly true is that people lied about him. There were a bunch of dirty tricks on both sides. It's a U.S. presidential election. These things aren't politics ain't beanbags, they say. And furthermore, now, ever since he lost the presidency, he has been the subject of lawfare, lawsuits at different levels, attempts to discredit him, attempts to 34 felony convictions, and that's just one set of lawsuits, and now somebody's shot at him. So it's a matter of survival. He has enemies that would like to put him out to pasture, to neutralize him permanently. I'm not suggesting that the same people are responsible for both the assassination attempt and the lawfare, but it's clear to him that unless he wins, there's real risks to his livelihood, his family, his person. And to secure himself, it's worth disciplining some of his more colorful instincts and adopting a tone that can get him what he wants in the medium term.
I mean, he is already monetizing this moment. There's like some commemorative, like baseball card type things that they're selling with the blood on his face and the fist in the air. Ken says kayfabe on steroids. I mean, I think everything about this, like I said, is emblematic of a kayfabe moment that we exist in currently. I would love to get how you guys feel about this. I brought it up in the opening monologue, but I'm old enough to remember the jokes about Ronald Reagan, even in his final term. And a lot of those jokes stem from him being not cognitively there, a doddering idiot who was reading the cue cards. And maybe Reagan is a little better than Biden at reading the cue cards because that's what he's done his whole life. And they could kind of point him in the right direction and he would just do the thing. He makes one of the biggest blunders, I would say, in the history of these debates as we know it, against, I believe it was Walter Mondale, where he admits to the Iran-Contra scandal, and then still wins by a landslide. Why is it that we view Reagan through this lens of a certain kind of cunning, when we really know it was more the people behind the scenes with him pulling the strings. And we view Biden as the person that has no one behind the scenes pulling the strings. Because it seems to me that the Democratic Party feels that we could put a cold body up there and beat this guy because no one really cares to the point that people think they care. What say y'all?
I don't think that's true. I think that there's actually a very keen awareness that there's a constellation of people behind him, and depending on who you read, they emphasize the family, especially Jill and Hunter, right? And for the Biden family and the various hangers-on, right? Their gravy train, their whole economic livelihood rests on Joe Biden's career. If he becomes just another ex-president and maybe dies right away, the instant he's out of office, then they have to start looking for real jobs. And Hunter may have to start getting ready to serve some real time. So there's those, but there's also, when it comes to foreign policy, there's Anthony Blinken, there's all kinds of figures. Not Kamala Harris, she's been successfully sidelined, but yeah, there's a combination of ex-Obama people. There's a lot. And they're the ones who have been steering him, right? Telling him where the podium was, preventing the worst moments from coming out, and the possibility that he wouldn't be able to manage, given his evident cognitive decline, without having a elaborate, a varied, numerous, and motivated team, concealing that from the public, running interference, and doing the managing of governance for him, if not making decisions for him. And I think that one reason why he's treated differently than Reagan is that at the end of Reagan's first term, it really did kind of feel like morning in America. You didn't have the same polarization, the same level of American on American hostility, right? The level of conflict in the United States right now between different political factions, different social groups, it's not something that I can recall at any point in my lifetime. You'd probably have to go back to the 60s to find that level. And, that is another era known for political violence, and where assassination became one method of dealing with political rivals or expressing political grievances.
This is also the same year that saw, I think it was late last year, someone self-emulated themselves, and then we had it again this year. So, this is 60s level, I guess we're getting to. I mean, Pascal, what say you?
I think that one of the things that distinguished Ronald Reagan was that Reagan was able to marshal in an agenda that transformed the whole governance landscape of the country to the reactionary right within his first term. So he came in looking like a winner after 4 years. Biden never had that kind of wind at his back. He was never able to look like a winner. He always looked like he was a kind of doddering, kind of just like, sleepy old man. I remember watching in the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Just from the beginning. I remember having a conversation with Glenn Ford, and he was like, yo, this guy doesn't look all here at all.
Remember he did that speech in front of the black people, like, black guys is almost as good as white guys.
Yeah.
They're almost there.
Black kids are almost as good as white kids.
Yeah. So Toussaint, what say you about all this? I know you were watching all the Trump news as the sirens were passing by. People were dancing in the streets. Whatever goes on in New York by your house, someone popped open a fire hydrant. Between all that New York going on, what were you gathering?
Well, much like you, I was sort of out of the loop with the news, but I was still on Facebook, and I started to see memes. Somebody had gotten a tattoo of Trump putting his fist in the air with the Secret Service around him.
Mhm.
And that's when I started to learn about the assassin.
And that's when I learned what a stalker was.
Yeah, it was kind of insane for somebody to already get a tattoo of that.
Someone's got a tattoo of Hawk Tua. So
Oh gosh.
yeah, that's the world we live in.
I also saw. Oh, sorry. Real
no,
quick.
please go ahead.
I also saw another meme of 5 celebrities that died that week. So there's a big picture of Shannon Doherty and another picture of Russell
Linda
Simmons.
Walsh.
Not Russell Simmons.
Russell Simmons, you at a
Richard
damn,
Simmons.
son, damn.
I wish.
Take that, Russ. You know all
Richard
about
Simmons.
you, brother. Yes.
Dr. Ruth, and then they showed the assassin, the attempted assassin, a picture of him.
What is it? Does anyone know the assassin's name?
I forget.
Thomas Carson something.
I think at Crooks.
Who?
Someone in the chat knows.
Who killed Robert Kennedy?
Sirhan.
There you go. That was quick.
Well, it's just one name. Thomas Matthew
name.
Crooks.
Yeah, who killed Lincoln?
John Wilkes Booth.
Pascal
There you
was
go.
there.
See how quick it is?
Pascal was there.
Pascal was there.
What was it like when Lincoln got shot, Pascal?
Pascal was an usher at
The theater.
I mean, everything was going great until this Southern gentleman is like, "Could you please hold my coat, sir?"
I find that interesting that no one knows the killer's name. I know a lot of people like that statement that says this is kayfabe on steroids. Of course, we really think someone really took a swipe at Donald Trump. It's just, for me, it's the way all of this is being portrayed, and the fact that I could go on any news channel after it happened. I saw my son on Saturday. And that wasn't the first thing out of his mom's mouth, but that was like kind of a table conversation as we sat down for dinner. Even my 5-year-old was like, "Somebody shot Trump." Like it's
Who was that?
Phoenix. Yeah. Yeah.
Phoenix was that plugged in?
Phoenix is plugged in, man. Well, who's his dad? You're gonna ask yourself that question. That's the bigger question.
But I think that the part of it has to do with the fact that we've had politics reduced to spectacle for so long.
Yes.
That even when things are serious, even when we should be transcending that, it's still the default that people, the default frame that people take to this. And the last few elections, and this is Chris Cutrone's take. You've got takes on the left along these lines that really it doesn't matter, what's so bad about Trump. After all, look at Gaza, look at Joe Biden's record on a plethora of issues. The
Was
Ukraine
Trump
war
supposed to be better on Gaza than Joe Biden?
Well, no, the idea is that
Chris Cutrone?
The idea is that they're equally terrible, right? Similarly, you go back to Ralph Nader in the 2000 election, and he's like, "Boer Gush," more like Gush Boer, right? But the reality is that things have gotten incrementally worse. We're like the apocryphal boiling frog, that we just adjust our expectations, even when we might be we've already passed a number of very serious thresholds, and we might be at the edge of, what Pascal was saying about Reagan is that when Reagan came in, he ushered in a really generational regime change inside the United States. The way that the government operated, the orientation of political programs, the whole direction of policy went from a New Deal consensus, which wrapped up even Republican presidents like Nixon and Eisenhower, to a new normal that constrained even Democratic presidents like Obama and Clinton. And at the forefront of that, which should be unsettling for everybody, was the Heritage Foundation.
Mhm.
They were the ones who offered Reagan, they were part of the coalition that offered Reagan his blueprint on how to transform institutionally the structure of government, to enable neoliberalism and avoid the type of foot dragging and institutional obstacles that had bedeviled Carter and that later would limit Obama when he tried to develop new diplomatic policies towards Iran and Cuba. He famously complained about the blob, the foreign policy deep state that prevented him from getting anything done. And similarly, checkmated Donald Trump's first term. Now, Project 2025, the parts of it that describe, their policy wish list, a lot of it is things that we've seen wouldn't be that out of place in a Mitt Romney platform. The scary parts are the detailed and very concrete understanding of the workings of the Washington bureaucracy, the executive branch, the legislative branch, going very deep into all federal agencies, including things like the federal electoral, the FEC, the Justice Department, with a detailed description about how they can prevent Trump from enacting his policies, how to gut them, who to replace, how to reorient these institutions, and as well as lists hundreds of candidates for staffing those roles. And they very frequently cite the first term of Ronald Reagan as their example about how to do this correctly, and as a touch point in terms of what achieving their ambitions could bring about. And also, they specifically quote, personnel is policy. You need to get rid of the careerists. You need to get rid of the people who sabotaged you initially. You can do that by reclassifying jobs, by using different disciplinary measures within the existing civil service, and also by introducing new legislation that they've already drafted. And here are the people that you bring in. Safe pairs of hands, people committed to our cause. And it's not just limited to Beltway insiders either. You yourselves, if you would like to be considered as conservative political appointees for Donald Trump, go to their website. They're taking names. They want a long bench. They want a completely new slate of personnel, new cadres, because they understand that the incumbents cannot be trusted, and they want individuals who aren't going to be careerists and bureaucrats and doing this for economic reasons, but they want ideologically loyal cadres. And once they're there, they'll be there for 20 years. It's a generational thing. And especially with a vice president like J.D. Vance, you have not only Trump as the revolutionary figure, but also a successor, handpicked, young, appropriate, capable, to consolidate that transition. And not for a single term either, but potentially, you're looking at 12 years on the ticket.
Is J.D. Vance?
J.D. Vance can literally carry the water for the Republican Party for 2 political generations.
Is J.D. Vance Trump's way to shore up the black vote?
I don't think he resonates with black people per se. I think he resonates with a lot of traditional conservative as well as fake populist white working class types who using rhetoric like the big man and the elites while, being Peter Thiel's little servant boy. gets him the ability to talk that populist stuff without laying a singular vote in favor of the working class in the Senate. And he's more competent than Trump was in his first term. And that's why I think he's more dangerous. He's more personable, he's more charming, he's smarter, he's younger, and he's very, very effective.
Does he not have the baggage of a guy like Mike Pence?
No, I think that the chat has made an excellent observation, which is that he's been enabled as well by Hollywood, by Silicon Valley, by elite
PBS.
academia. Yeah. Was it Netflix that aired the film version of Hillbilly Elegy? So he's got a movie credit behind his name, and he simultaneously, among a certain type of middle American working class voter, he might seem appealing enough, right, as one of theirs, but people have criticized the pick as one which doesn't do Trump much good electorally, that J.D. Vance isn't going to play well in the suburbs with the kind of swing voters that you need in Arizona or Nevada. I disagree. I think part of the genius of the pick is that because he actually has all of these elite PMC affiliations, he is kind of a reassuring pick for a lot of respectable upper middle class types that otherwise might see Trump as just too vulgar, too chaotic, too beyond the pale, unrespectable, to whatever the country club version of hood is. And, so I think that it's actually a very well balanced ticket, and with all of those connections too, we augment the heritage people and whoever they get to sign up. I'm sure they have a great dental, although I wouldn't count on getting your birth control covered. But J.D. Vance will also bring in a raft of highly credentialed, sophisticated people who know how to talk elite and manage their way through big bureaucracies. It's a dangerous pick.
Is this where we are now, though, where having some form of pop culture gravitas is going to help you into the White House?
I think the only ticket that could beat Trump at this point would be some culture industry figures that are more or less universally beloved or have a very broad appeal, that come from outside of politics and don't carry that polarizing taint on. Give them an argument yesterday. I suggested The Rock and Bill Burr.
The Rock. I was about to say The Rock.
Yeah, and I like Bill Burr as his Dick Cheney,
But like, all jokes aside, it really feels like that's where we are. I mean, considering that in 2016, someone literally walked off of a reality show, TV show set, that I was actually talking to someone a few days ago that worked on The Apprentice. I'll type in their name in the private chat so you guys know who I'm talking about.
Well,
and said all of it is staged. Dude didn't really know what was going on. And to walk off that set into the White House, then you have a guy like Joe Biden, who we all thought was done. Even in the 2016 elections, like, he's not running. Biden is done. He's literally out to pasture. And then they kind of bring him back in this way that's like, it does feel like a weekend at Bernie's since 2019, when he's talking about the hair on his legs and the black people he yelled at.
Well, and it goes both ways, actually. When you look at Barack Obama's career, it turns
Mm-hmm.
out that
Mm-hmm.
the presidency was just a stepping stone to what he really wanted to do, which is be a Hollywood producer.
Mm-hmm.
The connection between the apparatus of celebrity and the attention economy with politics, I think that that's been in place ever since there's been any kind of media. But the growth of media and its ability to colonize every spare moment of our lives, the interaction between content and smartphones, the new forms of social relationship, parasocial relations that come from with influencers, podcasters, you name it, content producers. Now, the two are indistinguishable, right? The politics is a flavor of the media and cultural space. Not everybody who's in media and culture need to do politics, but if you want to do politics, then
But everybody is to your point though, Kuba, even people in the comedy side of things are dabbling in some sort of political commentary. It does feel a little odd when we talk about serious things that we do on shows like this. People just call it content. Like it's just amorphous content. It's just stuff for me to listen to on my second screen.
well, I think also the sense of crisis that we're experiencing as this neoliberal apparatus, this neoliberal structure that was introduced during the Reagan administration that reached its zenith at the end of the Cold War, that ushered in technological and social changes, the introduction of the internet, gay marriage, all kinds of massive, epochal transformations that defined the age. All of that is breaking down, and it's breaking down before our eyes. It's extraordinarily disconcerting for everybody, right? If you know just a little, well, heat waves, the ice caps are melting. Somebody just tried to shoot the Apprentice television president candidate guy. And if you know too much, if you're brain poisoned like we are, then it only gets worse. And I think that our parents or grandparents generations, those lucky bastards, all they had to deal with was World War II. And after that, like, you came
Happy
home.
days are here again.
Sailing.
Yeah, like you could stop thinking about politics. You might have life problems, but they didn't feel like they were necessarily associated with who was in the White House or things like that. Of course, the 60s were another watershed and a very dangerous period as well. But in some ways, somebody reminded me about JD Vance. Like, part of his appeal is he's like the Bill Cosby to poor white people, Hillbilly Elegy is all about pulling up your pants and, like getting a job. And the Cosby Show, right, when we were younger, right, that was something that you would watch and you wouldn't think about the fact that everything was on fire. But now it's
I mean, that's
inescapable.
Pascal's big point about Bill Cosby and the Cosby Show. His big point of contention is the fact that the New York during that show is on fire, and especially on fire for Black New Yorkers. Pascal, you want to?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I don't like the Cosby Show is that it makes it seem like New York City at the time was Shangri-La for Black inner city folk, when at the time New York City was like a racial powder keg with Bernard Goetz, Yusef Hawkins, all Abner Louima, all that stuff was going on.
Pascal and Toussaint were running from Guardian Angels on the train. Toussaint, you ever got in a fight with a Guardian Angel?
No, thank
Do they-
God.
Do they still walk around New York breakdancing and fighting?
They do it with their vests on and the buttons on their vests. The
Do you
They
pin.
look
have
at
the
them?
berets.
Yep.
Do you look at them and say the guy you follow is kind of a douche nozzle?
I saw him on the train.
Did you tell him he was a douche nozzle?
No, I didn't. Those things are different in person. Some things are best handled on the internet.
I love the fact that you said that out loud and you just called everyone that talks shit online a coward.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not getting
Like,
punched in my face.
yeah, you know, I'll call Pascal a pussy online, but if I see him in real life, I'll be like, oh, hello, sir.
Call him sir.
Yeah, I'll call Kuba all kinds of names on the internet, but I didn't know he was 6 feet tall with such large hands.
You know, you need them for drowning the Ewoks. They have large skulls, so real advantage. It's part of the hiring process.
Do you think anything that's happened has galvanizing power for either party, or is this just going to be a bit of a watershed moment for donations? Pascal?
I think the Republicans are picking up money. You heard what Elon Musk said, right? Elon Musk said he's going to dedicate $45 million a month now to Trump or something like that.
Jesus.
Yeah, so there's some serious people talking about backing Trump in the face of this shooting attempt.
That's
So
a
I
damn
think
shame when you pay more for Trump than you do for the kid. Like your
Yeah.
child support payment is like 10,000, but Trump get 45 million
A month. Yeah.
a month.
Yeah, but the return on investment is going to come sooner with Trump.
It's very practical.
I feel like
Yeah.
Elon Musk's child is probably like the Omen, though.
Well, it seems like most of them turn away from him, right? Like that's why he needs to have so many, right?
You only need one Damien. Just remember that. They made 4 movies off one Damien.
But I'm very concerned about. You say that will this have a galvanizing effect? I think that there was an interesting piece on Slate that I read about the RNC, and it described the atmosphere of the RNC as being much more upbeat and almost party-like, enthusiastic. And remember, Trump has previously been the American carnage guy, right? Gloomy, intense, apocalyptic. It's a debate performance, for instance, was all about how everything is terrible and there's no hope, and illegals are coming here to burn everything down. And I think that after the assassination attempt, his response to it, and then his step away from the most inflammatory type of rhetoric. 1, they think they can win. 2, they're optimistic about what that may bring. And going back to the possibility of cleaning out the American civil service, the federal agencies, if you're a Trump supporter and there's going to be that kind of thoroughgoing house cleaning, well, your likelihood of getting an appointment, of being able to parlay this into personal advancement, has gotten much higher. And if he is able to make those institutional changes and eliminate the sources of resistance that prevented him from doing whatever he wanted his first term. And remember, even his own cabinet secretaries were undermining his decisions, like Jim Mattis, Rex Tillerson, others. Well, he's promised the largest program of mass deportations in U.S. history. That's something that's going to need a lot of new people. You're going to have to hire a lot of Customs and Border Patrol.
That's going to be the biggest hiring
US
we've had since the
Marshals.
New Deal.
Quite likely. And one of the recommendations in the Project 2025 program is to remove the college requirement for government hires and contractors. So you're opening up potential for a massive jobs program for the kind of people who have been frozen out of opportunity for basically since Bill Clinton came into office. And not only are they going to get economic opportunity, get government jobs, but we're not talking about TSA. That's too many. Sir, that water bottle is too large. I'm going to have to take it from you. But ones where you get to beat people up, where you get to round people up, where you're taking down names, where you've got all of these heritage schools in Washington whose job it is to make sure that you can do whatever you want to your detainees and that you can detain whoever you suspect. Plus the system where the structure, the pipeline, where, if somebody's an illegal alien, they're in the United States without the right documentation, therefore we can do whatever we want with them and they're going to disappear into some third country. Once you have that pipeline, detention centers, arresting officers, lawyers that sign off on everything, then if you want to broaden the persecution from beyond undocumented aliens inside the United States, all you need to do is come up with a legal system to strip Americans you don't like of their citizenship, because then they instantly become illegal aliens. And then you can do with them whatever you want. Incidentally, that's how they disposed of an entire generation of socialist and leftist activists during the Red Scare, right? A lot of naturalized Americans who were coming from Europe, from Eastern Europe, Russia, were active in leftist circles in New York City under Woodrow Wilson, the era around World War I. You find a pretext, strip them of their citizenship, send them back to St. Petersburg or Vladivostok. And I think that we should be circumspect in how we publicly respond to political developments, because now that somebody's taken a shot at Donald Trump, your edgelord tweeting, one, it's definitely being read by Langley, and two, it might not be being read with the same sense of humor as it was before.
Now, one of the things I tried to write about in Sublation some months ago was the fact that I think the People's Call, same as it ever was, that during the Biden administration, we don't get as much talk about immigration, even though he's stand strong on a lot of Trump policies. Child separation changes a little bit, but other than that, there's still the Remain in Mexico policy. It's still very heartbreaking to walk by the border near where I live. But I don't see the protests the same way. It does feel like, depending on who is in office, or bigger than that, depending on how the media wants to frame things, that's the way people react. I don't think there's a small amount of people that are very proactive. They're so busy they don't have time to be on media. But most of us are very reactive to what we see and understand, because we're not plugged in, right? Not everybody lives by the border. So when you hear about kids in cages, you want to go, save them all. It's heartbreaking. But for some reason, I guess people feel sanctuary cities save that or something. Even migrant caravans, the way that gets viewed is very skewed, as a city like Chicago's homeless population has tripled since they got pummeled with the migrant caravans. I think they got like 30,000 people dropped off on their doorstep in the past year. And we don't really see, I don't even want to say the word nuanced, kind of just proper coverage with context. So I did listen to, not all of the RNC, but a lot of it on my drive from the Bay Area to Mexico via the 101. And boy, was it gross. But it does seem like, besides immigration, another thing that almost feels bipartisan, and this, I think this does kind of work with what you're talking about, Kuba, as far as like rounding people up, is the way we look at our unhoused problem and municipalities passing bills that allow people to say, oh, you're suffering from an addiction or mental illness, we're just going to throw you in a facility. And now we have that ability to just hold you indefinitely. No more 72 hours. We're just going to throw you somewhere. And you probably don't have family anyway, so who cares? And you can't really work, so you are part of a disposable population. I mean, it feels like this nightmare scenario that you're talking about, the legislation to get these things done legally is starting to be put down. But I don't see the big pushback to any of this legislation.
I think that with the homeless population, with the unhoused population, there's a sense among the people who live in cities that having them around, regardless of the reality shown in crime statistics, creates a feeling of unease among, middle class, upper middle class, people who they call taxpayers on the wire, right? And they don't have the time or the inclination or the background to look at all the policy issues, and they also, don't have the time to make new friends with all their wonderful Sesame Street homeless neighbors, right? Like, they just see a situation that makes them feel unsafe, and whoever promises that they'll resolve it gets a certain amount of attention from that block. And the resistance, where it comes, actually comes from within the apparatus itself, right? Like child protective services or community groups that are receiving city or government money for service provision, basically saying, you can't do this. This is not how we do things around here. You're violating all kinds of internal rules. And they slow it down. It's like the Blob, but for domestic issues. It's like the Blob, but for disappearing homeless people. And that's part of the promise of a new Trump term, hyper-powered with something like Project 2025, that those internal checks, and they don't even have to be formal or legal. It could just be a 20-year-old veteran of a regional health and human services department, like one of those old white women with 40 cats, glasses, and straight gray hair, that bakes cookies and gives them to like the homeless guy in front of her church. It's like, no, these new rules, right? Like that they just passed in city council. You can't just drop them off at county. No, that's not how it works. And one person like that, if they've got a perch inside the bureaucracy of government, can actually completely derail an otherwise brilliant plan. So now there's a brilliant plan to get rid of all those people.
Yeah, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, and with them gone, it's worse than them just being gone, because that perch remains. You just replace it with a fire-breathing psychopath hopped up on MAGA pills and right? Like imagining that everybody who looks a certain way must be illegal and needs to be dropped off in Guatemala ASAP. Yeah, so that's the risk, right? Like even when the electorate, even when the public is kind of fed up and willing to behave pretty inhumanely to vulnerable populations, you do have some remnants of the old regime that slow down that process. The question is, will a second Trump term clean out that entire those holdovers and create a replace this humanely inefficient and doddering failing system with a very effective one designed for maximum suffering.
Pascal Robert.
I mean, it's depressing as hell, but frankly, it seems like that's the direction they're going to go in because these mercenaries are not playing games.
Toussaint.
I'm sorry.
Why are you sorry? Did you fart?
No, I don't remember the question.
Oh, it's okay. That's fine.
Can I make a point from
No.
earlier?
Nope. Yeah, you can.
Thank you. So you had talked about J.D. Vance and asked if he was supposed to appeal to the Black community. I don't think the Republicans are going to do anything to appeal to the Black community. Not that J.D. Vance appeals to them.
You didn't hear Tim Scott walk on stage at the RNC.
Was he beatboxing?
You would have thought, dude, you would have thought Elvis came back with that fit, with that onesie. You would have thought Elvis walked on with the onesie doing this. Tim Scott walked on stage and he had to like pause for a second because the crowd went nuts and told some up from poverty story about how his mother was on government assistance and he went to a private school and that's why he's a good Black.
Wow.
And Donald Trump gets into office, we're going to get more good Blacks into private school. And those people lost their minds.
Well, I was going to say they don't need to pick a VP to appeal to Black people because Black people who are voting for Trump would be voting against Biden and the Democratic Party.
Do you think there's a lot of Black people that want to leave the plantation of the Democratic Party, so to speak, using Turning Points USA?
Absolutely. And the percentage is increasing. And it's becoming really easy.
Is there a gender gap? Is this a gendered thing? I remember seeing some headlines that Black female voters in the Democratic Party were the ones saving Biden. And
yeah, and let's be honest, guys, Black guys can't vote.
No.
Let's be honest. All right. Boys in the Hood taught me that. You guys are getting mad about nothing.
Is that because you feel bad that white guys can't jump? I mean, it's awfully kind of you, but unnecessary.
All right. Well, let's go. It's been an hour. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Thank you, Aaliyah. And welcome back. It's been a while.
BBL Jason.
BB. And remember, everyone, MAGA pills are just gas station dick pills.
Wow.
That's all they are. Stay away from MAGA pills. It just Pascal looks like he got a headache. Yes, gas station dick pills will give you a headache. They don't work. Trust me. And on that note, we'll see you guys in the champagne room. We are
out.